Durant said after the game that the loss was a slap in the face. You know what, Stephen A.? Let's go there. Has Durant made the Warriors worse?
First of all, I think the question itself is idiotic, and anybody who thinks that it makes the Warriors worse after one game is idiotic. It makes no sense whatsoever. It's an 82-game schedule. It's one bad night. They didn't show up to play, which is something we have to ask Steve Kerr about, who is a great coach but has struggled in Game 7 of last year's NBA Finals and struggled the very next game, which was Game 1 of this season. They seemed ill-prepared. Let me just put it out there. They were missing threes. Steph Curry shot 3 of 10 from three-point range. Klay Thompson shot 1 of 6. That's 4 of 16 from the best shooting backcourt we've ever seen, okay? They did not have a good night. They were missing layups. They were sloppy with the basketball. They were turning it over. Meanwhile, the San Antonio Spurs had aberrations all over the place. Jonathan Simmons, 20 points on 8 of 14 shooting. Kawhi Leonard, we know he can play. We know he's a stud. But 35 points, come on now. That's not what you expect from Kawhi Leonard. Well, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? We're talking about the Spurs and Warriors.
I'm sorry, I didn't know. Carmelo or Kawhi.
But I didn't know that that's what we were talking about. I thought we were talking about the Spurs and Warriors last night.
I didn't even know I said it out loud.
You're already annoying him.
Yeah, you did. Okay. The point is that, and I'm a little sick by the way, but I'm all right. The point is that Kawhi Leonard is not going to drop 35 on most nights. Kawhi Leonard is a stud. We know he could play. But the kind of night that he had last night was by and large due to the sloppiness of the Golden State Warriors that gave the San Antonio Spurs an abundance of opportunities. San Antonio, obviously exceptionally well coached, came ready to play. They were ready for the season opener, and they performed like it. But the Golden State Warriors were incredibly sloppy. That is an aberration. That is not something that's going to happen on most nights against this team. It was a bad night. That's all it was.
Of course, Kevin Durant has made them worse. We're talking about right now, are they better or worse than they were last year when they were a 73-win team that came within a couple minutes, really a couple possessions, of winning the finals again? Yes, they are worse for now. Just like when LeBron and Bosh got to the Heat with Wade, they didn't get worse because of where the Heat were coming from. But it took them a while to get going. Through their first 17 games, they were 9-8. And then they went 22-1. So, and made it to the finals where LeBron choked it away, but still they were favored and they probably should have won had LeBron not choked it away. So does Kevin Durant in the long run make the Warriors the favorites still? Yes, I believe he does. Do I think they're going to win the chip this year? Yes, I think they will. You take out Harrison Barnes in a death lineup and insert Kevin Durant. Boy, that's worse than a death lineup. That's a lineup will kill you and then kill you again in the afterlife. So I think he makes them better in the long run. But for now, and maybe for the foreseeable future, for the first 10, 15, maybe 20 games, they're not going to be as good as they were. That is a major piece to integrate into the chemistry of the team. And I don't just mean the way the death lineup maybe works. It's the way Steve Kerr has to juggle the pieces. When do we play Steph with Durant? Because when they played together, actually, they were a +1 on the Spurs. But he tried to play them separately. It didn't work. Big negative plus-minus numbers when he did that. How do we fit Iguodala into this? What's his role in the second unit? All those things have to be figured out now against real NBA competition with the money on the line now over the first several weeks of the season. And over that time, this Warriors team will be worse than they were. Of course they will be.
Well, listen, the point that I'm trying to make to you is this. Even last night was no indication because of the missed shots. If Steph Curry and Klay Thompson don't shoot 4 of 16 from three-point range, what are we talking about here?
8 of 16, 12 points. They lost by 29, Stephen A., so they still lose by 17.
Well, excuse me, this is basketball, so what happens is allow me to teach you something for a particular second here. With basketball, there's such a thing as tempo and momentum. So you might hit those few shots. By hitting those few shots, everything else tends to flow because you're cutting down on those turnovers. You're playing with more confidence.
Sure.
You're not frustrated and you're overcompensating, and as a result, you do things that lend itself towards you making even more mistakes, which leads to an horrific night like last night was. Just those shots alone, it's not a matter of points.
Yeah, but
it's a matter of the other increments that come with it. Hold on.
29 points.
I'm sorry, I just explained it.
They don't
Do I
explain
need to repeat
29,
myself?
but go ahead.
You understand? It does explain 29. If you know basketball, it explains 29.
Well, what explains
it's not
29
just about
is
the
they
numbers.
don't have a last line of defense because in order to make room for Kevin Durant, actually a point that you brought up yesterday, no Bogut. Also, no Ezeli, no Spates, who was really only nominally a big man for them in terms of the function he served. But they were able last year to be reckless, swarming, ball defenders where they can't gamble the same way because they don't have that last line of defense. All those things take getting used to for them and take adjustments.
Well, I noticed that your strategy is not listening to me and then making a point to buffer your own point, even though it wasn't really a point because you didn't hear what I was trying to say. What I said was, in the interest of full disclosure for the audience out there, is this. When you're playing the game of basketball, if you're making shots and it emboldens you, all of a sudden you cut down on the turnovers, your confidence is elevated, and the mistakes that you normally make that ultimately tend to snowball on you don't exactly occur. So it's not just about missing 12 of the 16 three-pointers that they made and how that would make up for it. It's not just about that. It's about alleviating the other mistakes that you would have predictably made if you didn't miss those shots. You have to also take into consideration Kawhi Leonard. Not only did he have 35 points, he went to the free throw line 15 times and made all 15 of his free throws. That's just 3 less than the entire Golden State Warriors team. And what happens when you're not making shots? What happens when you're getting frustrated? You turn the ball over and you tend to foul more because out of frustration, you do things like that, which is why he went to the line so much. So all of those things contributed to it. In the end, all I'm trying to say is that one game like this doesn't mean that the Golden State Warriors are worse. They had a bad night. That is what happened. There's nothing else to this.
They will be better in the long run in the sense that they're probably going to win the championship this year, or at least they've given themselves an even better chance likely to win it this year than they had last year. But you can't just say, well, he didn't make them worse right now. First of all, they ain't going to win 73 games again. I mean, in the long run, that's not going to happen. You had to get a little lucky to do that anyway. Secondly, there will be an adjustment period, and here we're seeing it. And thirdly, to credit Popovich, even though he's also had to integrate new pieces, he loses Tim Duncan, who's the backbone of that franchise for so long, brings in Gasol. There are changes on the Spurs too, but none as big as bringing in a Kevin Durant and how that changes things. And so Popovich's unit performs like a team that's been playing together a long time, like a team. And Golden State is still trying to figure out what team they're going to be.
So let me ask you a question here, Max Kellerman. If the Golden State Warriors go on a roll, for example, right? And let's just say they win 20 straight.
Sure, possibility.
But then they show up one night and they lose by 30. What you gonna say then?
They got blown out after a great winning streak. This is not that. This is very similar to what we saw in Miami when the Big Three got together. How do you know what it is?
Hold on, that's my point. How do you know what it is? Because it's game one.
Right.
Because I know it's game one of the regular season.
And have you seen...
One night in, and you're ready to say they're worse? One night?
Yes. Well, for right now, yes. That's frequently what happens when you bring in a brand new piece that is going to be so important to the team. Frequently, there's an adjustment period. In the long run, I expect them to be better. In the short run, I expect them to be worse while they figure this out. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. By the way, 73-9. The likelihood is they may not do that again, but that wouldn't mean it's because they're worse. It would mean because, as Max Kellerman adroitly pointed out in weeks past and days past, they were foolish to expend so much energy trying to capture that streak, playing guys extra games and extra minutes and all of that other stuff. So they damaged themselves for the finals by expending so much energy and beyond in pursuit of the all-time record and the all-time season. So it's entirely plausible that the Golden State Warriors may indeed reach a point where they're willing to say, that record is not important to us because the regular season is not that important to us. What we need to do is think like the Spurs and do everything that we can to be at elite peak physical condition for the postseason, which might not lend itself towards 73-9. That does not make them worse, according to Max. Not even me. Well, according to Max, it didn't make them worse. It made them wise. It made them wise.
Let me return the compliment in that case, Stephen A. It is true, had the Warriors gone 16 for 16 from 3, they would have won by a little bit. That's true.
All right. Are we done here, gentlemen? Are we good?
Who knows what Max? Who knows what he's going to say next? I don't know when he's done, but go ahead.
Oh, testy. I like it. All right, enough of these two. We want to hear from you guys, our First Take fam. Go on Twitter, vote in our poll. Has Durant made the Warriors worse? Sorry, Stephen, I asked the question again. We'll share those results a little later in the show. But meanwhile, the Cavaliers picked up where they left off. They kept the magic rolling in the land last night with their new rings, crushing the Knicks 117-88. LeBron James started the season off with a bang, a triple-double with 19 points, 11 rebounds, and 14 assists in the win. Stephen A., did the Cavs prove they are the best team in the association?
No, they didn't, because they were playing against the Knicks, which means they didn't receive a real test. We don't know. The New York Knicks, with their starting 5, played decent enough basketball, particularly in the first half. But then in the second half, they didn't show up. They have no bench to speak of, and we all need to be thinking about Phil Jackson and when it's going to be time for him to get to L.A., because clearly he doesn't seem as interested as he should be in building an actual team here in New York City. Bottom line is that the Cleveland Cavaliers were head and shoulders above. Kyrie Irving went ballistic in the third quarter, put on an absolute show. The tandem of him and LeBron James shows why they're the champions and why they should be the favorites in the Eastern Conference. But whether or not they've proven they're the best, you have to go through a real test before we're willing to say that. And there's no way on earth that I can say that, because unfortunately the New York Knicks didn't provide the kind of exam needed to gauge such a proclamation.
The Cavs proved they were the best team in the NBA by winning the championship last year. That's when they proved it. And there's been very little turnover on the team. Look, I know Della Vedova, he's the scrappy guy and everything. They really needed him when they didn't have Kyrie Irving or Kevin Love in the finals 2 years ago. Not as much did they need him in last finals, considering what was available to them. And obviously Mozgov, that's, you know, in a certain way similar to Bogut in the sense that he's a big body and he can act as a rim protector, and he's nimble for a big man and all that stuff. So they missed those pieces. But there's no real huge turnover by the standards of most rosters, especially after you win a championship, trying to hold on to everything. You're going to bring in some draft picks. There wasn't huge turnover. So this is basically the same team we saw just win the championship. And as of now, until the Warriors really get rolling, the Cavs are clearly going to be the best team in the NBA. And, you know, you got to give credit to the Spurs, although I think the Spurs in recent postseasons, because they've been out-athleted by other teams, are kind of, you know, put to the side until they prove otherwise. The Cavs once again show why they're the best. They're a cohesive unit. They have continuity from last year. And Stephen A., they have 2 great players and a couple other pretty good ones.
Here's my problem with your position. You're not resolute, because you're going to be dancing all year if you continue on this path. You've been very, very clear about how the Golden State Warriors are the favorites. Then you start out talking about how they're not better than they were last year, and last night proved that. Now you're coming with the Cavs and you're talking about how they're the best team for now because they proved it last June. And oh, by the way, here they are again, having played last night, but at the same time, you're not picking them to win the championship. Based on what you're telling me, how can I pin Max Kellerman down definitively as we look at this NBA season? Because I want to make sure I'm clear about what you're saying. You're saying Golden State is going to go to the finals against the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Correct.
And you're saying Golden State is going to win, correct?
Correct. But early in the season, Cleveland will look better than Golden State because of the continuity issue, which Cleveland has. And also, to the Knicks' point, the reason I've been saying to people like you, and in fact you on this show, that the Knicks ain't making no conference finals, is the bench. They don't have a bench.
You did say that.
I mean, and then Joe Kim.
You did say that, but I never refuted that. But see, the problem is you think I refuted that. I never did. What I said was that starting five with the big if as it pertains to their health is good enough against the marginal teams for them to have a respectable record and ultimately get there. It wasn't to bloviate about the Knicks. It was an indictment against the rest of the Eastern Conference. Because when you look at everyone outside of Cleveland, who can you definitively say is you can pencil them in as money? You don't know. Boston is too young, and I'm not that high on the Al Horford acquisition. Indiana's got a new point guard. Indiana, I understand that. But again, I'm thinking about Melo, too. And I think about the standpoint, there have been times. I remember times when Jordan was playing. And I looked at Chicago, and I thought that there were teams better than Chicago. They just didn't have MJ. And I look at certain teams in the East, not Cleveland, of course, but I look at other guys, and I say to myself, all right, what if Melo went ballistic? Could they beat those teams?
But
I think they could.
We've been arguing about this. That's the problem. You and others will overrate Melo and say, since they have Melo, that gives them a good chance. Then they don't do it, as they never do. And Melo is not one of the 5 or probably 10 best players in the league. And then those same people, including you, will say, well, because he doesn't have a team around him. See, if Melo needs to be traded, maybe Melo isn't as good as you think he is.
Whoa. First of all, I'll give you credit for this. You have been resolute about Melo. That bravo to you. It's a rarity. But the reality is simple. When you talk about Carmelo Anthony, understand something. You and I are on opposite ends of the spectrum as it pertains to him. But when I'm talking about the New York Knicks, I'm also talking about the rest of the Eastern Conference outside of Cleveland.
Toronto?
I don't have a lot of faith in those guys. Even Toronto.
They're better than the
last
Knicks.
year. I think, well, Dwayne Casey's a hell of a coach. Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan can really play. But Bismarck Biyombo being gone, I think, relatively hurts them. Valanciunas, we'll see what he does this year. I look at things like that. I'm looking at Jeff Teague in Indiana, which is why when they asked me the question, I specifically stated that Indiana's a possibility to go up against Cleveland. And I mentioned Toronto. I said the Knicks had an outside shot, and I wouldn't completely dismiss them. But under no circumstances did I label them as the team that would definitively meet Cleveland, because I know the Achilles that plagues this franchise. And I get all of that. All I'm saying is, at the end of the day, where the dichotomy exists between you and I, is that I firmly have more belief in Melo than you do.
Yes, you do. As a matter of, well, we can talk about the Knicks another time, because this can go on and on. But I got some more bombshells for you on the Knicks as this season goes on, Stephen A.
Yeah, well, they ain't going to be bombshells, because bombshells implies that it's something about them that I don't know and won't find out until you tell me. And I assure you, there ain't a damn thing you can tell me about the Knicks that I don't already know.
Oh,
this is going to be fun.
We'll leave it there. It is going to be fun, and it's still early. Plenty more First Take coming up. We stay in Believeland. The World Series kicked off last night with a big win for the Indians, leading the Cleveland Police Department to troll the Cubs on Twitter. They filed a missing persons report for the Cubs offense. # rally together. Goose egg, go Tribe. That is so wrong. We discuss if Cubs fans should be in panic mode. That is next. Outs over 6th inning. The Cubs struck out a total of 15 times in the game, as they're now trailing 1-0 in the series. History not on Chicago's side either. Listen to this. The winner of Game 1 has won 6 straight World Series and 24 of the past 28. Not a great sign for those Cubs. So, Max, I start with you here. Is it times for those Cubs fans to panic?
No, not yet, but it's hilarious that they will.
What's wrong with you?
Yes, I'm anti-Cub fan, as a matter of fact. I can't
Stop
take it anymore.
it.
Oh,
It's
so sickening, Stephen A. It's like the Red Sox fans in '04, and then the whole country gets behind them because of the curse, and it's been so long. Oh, I hope they lose. That's right, Cubs fans. I hope you lose. I'm rooting for Cleveland. That said, the panic can come when you see a stat like you lose Game 1 in a best of 7, and the last 24 teams to win Game 1 have gone on to win the series. Oh, excuse me, 24 out of 28 teams have won the World Series when they win Game 1. And so you look at that and you go, man, that All-Star game is too influential. Look at that. You got to start it in Cleveland because of some stupid All-Star game. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But I'm here to tell you, I don't care if that game was played in Chicago, in Cleveland, or on the moon. It was likely Cleveland was going to win that game. They had the pitching matchup, and they have Andrew Miller coming out of the bullpen, after a legitimate ace starts the game. So he can come into a game with the bases loaded and it's still tight in a very high leverage situation and be properly used the way your best relief pitcher should be used. Not in the ninth inning with no one out, no one on, and a 2 or a 3-run lead. The stupid way most Major League bullpens have been used since Tony La Russa did that with Eckersley. But the smart way bullpens used to be used. High leverage moment, bases loaded, close game. We need to get an out now. Bring in Andrew Miller, who's been absolutely lights out in that situation this entire postseason. But now you go to game 2, and the pitching matchups, back until you get to the Cleveland Ace again, favor the Cubs, and not by a little bit. I know Arrieta wasn't great in the second half, but between him and Bauer, I'll take Arrieta all day. I think the Cubs even it up, and Cubs fans should calm down. But I'm glad they're panicking now.
Well, first of all, that last comment was not necessary. I mean, what emotional investment do you have? You're supposed to be a New Yorker and a Yankee fan. What the hell are you worried about how they're feeling for? They haven't won a World Series in 108 years. Give them a break. Give them a break. Stop messing with them. Here's what I would say to you.
Cubs stuff.
Bottom line is this. I'm still going to roll with the Cubs because I'm not going to change my pick like some people I know. But I will tell you that I am concerned. And if I were them, I would be worried. Panic would be a bit too extreme, but I would be worried. Here's why. This ain't the first time they've been shut out in this postseason. They were shut out a couple of times against the Dodgers. And then when you look at the Indians, who are boasting an ERA of less than 2 throughout this postseason, against the Red Sox, against the Blue Jays, and now the Cubs, where 96 batters have been struck out. I mean, that's just not something that you can ignore. I'm looking at them right now, and I'm saying these boys are legit. They ain't playing games. They going out there, and they're handling their business. And if you're the Cubs, you've got to wonder how much longer can you continue to dance against destiny, in a sense, or ride destiny's wave. At some point in time, you got to handle your own business the way they did, particularly in games 5 and 6 of that NLCS series against the Dodgers. Bryant's got to step up. Montero's got to step up. Rizzo's got to step up. All of these guys got to step up. And Schwarber, even though he came back after only being out since game 3 of the regular season, coming in there and smacking a double, that was a big-time strikeout he suffered from at the hands of Andrew Miller, and I think it was in the 8th inning. So I'm looking at them right now, and I'm saying when your bats, usually in a World Series, you come in with momentum, or even if you don't have it, you build it and you build off of it. What's concerning me about the Cubs is that they seem to be this roller coaster ride. That's not going to work against the Indians. The Indians are loaded. They have some starting pitching, but they really have a strong bullpen. And when you take that into consideration, and the way that they play defense, and the way that somehow, some way they usually were able to manufacture runs, even though that wasn't the case last night because Ricardo Perez just showed up and handled his business with 4 RBIs, you've got to be consistent. And speaking of Perez, we got to give him credit. Because the game that he called behind the plate, Kluber gave him a lot of credit as well. He should. This dude seems to know all the tricks of the trades and what the batters are looking for. He seems to really do his homework when it comes to those guys coming up at the plate against his pitchers. And he knows what to do. And Kluber gave him all the credit in the world because he said the only time I messed up is when I didn't execute what he asked me to. So you've got a catcher, and I don't underestimate catchers at all, man, because catchers call the games behind the plate. They control those pitches. They make sure that they're doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. And right now, Perez seems to be flowing and rolling at the most opportune time. So that's just more things that works against the Chicago Cubs. And I hope they step up and handle their business. But I'm getting a little bit worried for them.
Not to mention he smacked a couple home runs here, and not that many catchers have ever done that. And the list is very impressive of the handful that have. And now he's on that list.
Correct.
In the postseason, it's pitching and defense. All those things that you heard if you were a kid growing up or if you're a kid now and somehow you still like baseball, which, it's been widely reported is an aging sport in terms of fan interest. So most of the people who are really into baseball a little bit older. And as kids, we always heard it's pitching and defense in the postseason. And I always thought, come on, why would it be pitching if it's also hitting in the regular season? What changes in the postseason? But this has been studied, and the conclusion is it is, in fact, pitching and defense in the postseason. When you look at how much of an influence, how correlated offense, scoring runs is, or a high-powered offense is to winning the World Series, the answer is not very. So the Cubs offense, Stephen A., that you're hoping to come alive, That's probably, it's usually not what happens in the postseason. They're going to have to pitch. Now, their bullpen isn't the Cleveland bullpen because they don't have a guy like Andrew Miller who they bring in high leverage moments. But a weakness, which was the end of the bullpen, has been addressed in the biggest possible way when they got Aroldis Chapman. So they have superior starting pitching in terms of the depth of the staff.
But they got to score to get a lead.
Closer.
They got to score to get a lead to give Chapman something to protect. And that's their problem. They're not doing that on occasion.
Well, I mean, Bauer's been blown up in this postseason a little bit, giving up a couple home runs, has not been, like, if you look at the number 2 and number 3 pitchers for Cleveland, I might take the Cleveland ace, but I'll take the 2s and the 3s from Chicago. So I think if they even this up in Game 2, you're going to feel a lot differently heading into Game 3.
You're probably right about that if that happens, but that would mean that we have to rely on Jake Arrieta to step up. And over the last 3 months, he hasn't been the Jake Arrieta we once knew and loved for the previous 16 to 18 months. That's my only concern.
Yeah, I hope the Cubs fans are concerned. I'm just
oh,
sick
my
of
gosh.
it.
Cubs fans, I'm rooting for you. Please ignore the troll to my left.
So sick of it. Oh, the Cubs, we haven't won in so long, and all the country,
Goodbye, Max.
Sweethearts.
We're going to break. Goodbye. And on a much more serious note, add the Josh Brown situation to the list of situations the NFL just didn't seem to get right the first time. We'll discuss what the NFL can learn from this after the break. Stay here. The NFL placed Josh Brown on the commissioner's exempt list Friday for violating the league's domestic abuse policy. Then yesterday, Brown released the following statement to Adam Schefter. I'm sorry that my past has called into question the character or integrity of the New York Giants, Mr. Mara, or any of those who have supported me along the way. I have taken measures to get help so that I may be a voice of change, not a statistic. It is important to share that I never struck my wife and never would. Abuse takes many forms, and it is not a gray area. Through the past several years, I've worked to identify and rectify my own behaviors. The road to rehabilitation is a journey and a constant modification of a way of life. My journey will continue forever as a person determined to leave a positive legacy, and I embrace the opportunity to show and speak about what has helped me to be that man. In the interim, I'm cooperating with the Giants and the NFL. Thank you to everyone that has supported me. I will not let you down. So after Josh released that statement, Giants owner John Mara releasing a statement of his own where he decided to not keep Josh on the commissioner's exempt list, but to release him. We believed we did everything at every juncture in our relationship with Josh. Our beliefs, our judgments were misguided. We accept that responsibility. Will Kane now with us. How we doing, Will?
Good. Good morning to you.
Good morning. I want to start with you here. What can the NFL learn from this?
Well, I think that the NFL has a choice to make. The NFL, the New York Giants, individual teams can either choose to stand by their convictions, develop principles, and do what is right for both victims and the accused, or it can cave to the grandstanding of the media and the mindlessness of the mob. I believe that the New York Giants originally tried to do what they thought was right. Now, ultimately, they gave in to publicity and PR, as we've seen the NFL over and over do. It's a business. It's driven by the audience, a.k.a. the consumers, and often the media. So ultimately, it will bend to the will of the popular public. That doesn't mean it was right, ultimately, in what they did yesterday. Now, listen, I need to say these caveats every time, but I don't believe it is ever right to place your hands on a woman. I grew up in a culture and in a place where the definition of what a man is certainly undercut by anyone who would touch a woman in any sort of violent way. But that being said, I don't think this is that simple, Molly, Stephen A., and Max. I don't think it's as simple as those that are for domestic violence and those that are not. I think the Giants and John Mara attempted to indulge some very difficult questions that all of us should. Questions like, what is the standard of guilt when we decide somebody has or has not committed domestic violence? When should we give allowances for when someone is actually actively seeking help, which it appeared that Josh Brown was? When should we afford second chances? That's a deep moral question. I think the Giants, and I can't say this for certainty, but I think the Giants were attempting to indulge a lot of these questions. But ultimately, that's not allowed anymore. What is only allowed now, and this is largely driven by the media, and this is where I get the most upset, because it's a complete dereliction of our jobs, but you're either on the side of domestic violence or you're not. That's what we've reduced this to. We have said, if you don't get on television and attempt to prove, more than the next guy who's going to speak after you, that you are so opposed to domestic violence, that that it is the most egregious sin, and no way can you be more opposed to it than me. If we don't do that, then we risk being someone who is in support of it. And ultimately what we have done is we go on TV and we either try to brand ourselves as virtuous. By the way, I don't think you're virtuous for things you say on television. Or you're just afraid to bring up important questions because of the risk of being labeled as somebody who's callous. And that has real cost. And this is the most important thing. When you reduce it to this, you hurt, number one, the victim. Molly Brown asked repeatedly that Josh Brown not be fired. She needed his income. Read an article by Diana Moskovitz on Deadspin.com from yesterday. The person that it's often hurt when an accused is cut from his job is the victim. They need the family support and income. You also hurt anyone that's potentially seeking help. The smoking gun in this case was Josh Brown's journal entries and therapy records. He was seeking help. What about the next guy? Will the next guy go seek help if he believes it will ultimately end in his conviction? And third, you're going to hurt the next victim, because they're going to be much more reluctant to report. They don't want their husbands to lose their job or their ex-husbands to lose their jobs, they lose support. They're worried, and we saw this, by the way, with Aroldis Chapman's ex-wife. She was afraid on the call with 911. She was afraid he'd be arrested because she knew that would hurt her family eventually. The point is, you're reducing this. We have reduced it to simplistic, stupid questions, and we have hurt everybody in the process. So will the NFL learn anything? I don't think so. It's us in the media that need to learn something.
I want to address a couple of things you brought up. First of all, the Moskovitz article. I touched on this the other day when the subject came up about the family as an economic unit. One of the issues that I thought she went over very well in her article is that if the punishment, once a domestic violence perpetrator is found, let's assume guilt for a second, if the punishment is you lose your job, that can dissuade the victims of the violence who are reliant, in this case, even a divorced couple who gets alimony or child support, that can dissuade, that can work as an incentive to not report domestic violence, which is what we don't want, particularly when someone like Josh Brown's journal, for example, points out, is actually taking a look at themselves and trying to accept responsibility and change. Of course, there's recidivist behavior, and maybe in his case that doesn't apply as much, based on the way he actually behaved, apparently. But the question is, what can the NFL learn from the Josh Brown situation? And I think one of the reasons, Will, that you get some grandstanding about it is because there are two things the NFL can learn. One, do a serious investigation. Really investigate. When you call up and say, hey, can we see the journal? And the police department says no, and you don't identify yourself as calling from the NFL and you don't follow up, that's one.
Can I just say, in response to that one, Max, the NFL is not built to be an investigative body. Sure. It's Keystone Cops when it's investigating. It simply will never satisfy anybody's standards of what a thorough or appropriate investigation is.
But if it was any kind of competent person, they wouldn't just say, no, okay, thanks, click. You do. I mean, it didn't seem that hard to get. Now, maybe it's he said in this case, or they said, the sheriff's department and the NFL.
And they hired a staff for women to deal with these specific issues.
Thus illustrating how complicated
wait. So one, you have to investigate for real. Two, especially if you profess that we're really going to investigate and take it seriously. Two, you have to enforce your own rules. If the rule is a 6-game suspension, and you don't really investigate, and then you give a 1-game suspension, then it blows up into an issue where one after another wants to show how I'm more outraged than you. Then I agree there can be a cascading effect that may not be helpful in the genuine discourse in terms of how to make things better. But I think if you enforce, you investigate, 6 games, then it doesn't feel like a cover-up. It feels, at least, gives the impression that they're taking it seriously. And I don't think you get the same kind of pernicious kind of atmosphere afterwards that you get now.
They also re-signed him, too. Stephen A.
I think we're somewhat missing the point here. And I appreciate deeply what Will said, and I'll get into that in just a minute, Will. But hear me on this. The issue at hand is the hypocrisy on the part of the NFL and that of specifically the New York Giants. Because if indeed this was a domestic violence issue, and that is certainly the interpretation that was handed to us, then we have to go to John Mara, and we have to remember that this is the same individual as portrayed in an article, a column by Gary Myers of the New York Daily News in this past Sunday's paper, which was an exceptional column. And he highlighted the hypocrisy on the part of Mr. Mara because he was talking about how the Ray Rice situation went down. And one of the people very, very upset with how things were handled was Mara at Roger Goodell, because he thought a heavier hand should have been brought down upon Ray Rice from the initial circumstance of the situation when he initially got 2 games and before the video had come out. And John Mara was talking about how a mistake was made and we have to learn from this and we have to make sure we handle this in the dogged fashion that it requires. Well, that appeared to be, those words were inconsistent with his actions involving Josh Brown. The question is why? Why was it inconsistent, John Mara? Why was it inconsistent, New York Giants? Why was it inconsistent, NFL? Because Roger Goodell, through Lisa Friel and an assemblage of women that he had hired to investigate these matters and address them adroitly, what happened? You basically didn't do anything but hand down a 1 game. The fact that you put him on the exempt list just shows that it's something that you could have done earlier, but you elected not to do so when all of this pomp and circumstances about having a new committee with these women who were supposed to help you make these decisions were put in place, and then it wasn't exercised. So we have a negligence of duty on the part of the NFL, and certainly on the Giants organization, courtesy of Mr. Mara. Now let's go to what Will Cain just said. Will makes a very interesting point when he brings up how we, as the fourth estate, the media, simply hears the word domestic violence, and that's that, without investigating. He's absolutely right. And I actually don't give a damn about that if you put your hands on a woman. Because if you put your hands on a woman, the hell with all of this. You need to pay the price immediately. What gives me cause to pause is that when Josh Brown accepted being on the exempt list, and he didn't appeal anything, hasn't fought it, and took the liberty to explain himself, what he specifically said is, I've never struck my wife. So if we're talking, let's just say for the sake of argument that he didn't hit her, he didn't grab her, he didn't shove her, he didn't push her. Now we're talking verbal. Now when it comes to verbal and there's no physical altercation, that needs to be investigated.
Right. Because
2 people arguing with one another, I'm not saying in any way that this is the case because I don't know. What I'm saying is, if we were to find out that Josh Brown's definition of abuse was that he cussed at her because she cussed at him and they were cussing at each other, I would be embarrassed that we, as a fourth estate, would feel the need to get involved with something like that.
Well,
because, wait, it's like, oh, you're cussing at each other, and that's why we've been talking about this? Now, if there's any kind of physical violence whatsoever, to me, that's non-negotiable. But in terms of just verbal communication with one another, I don't know if that's any of our business to be passing judgment against somebody without a thorough investigation as to what all the facts may be. You don't require that necessarily when it comes to fisticuffs, because you ain't got no business putting your hands on a woman. But if it's just verbal, I don't know if that's any of our business.
I'm not going to interrupt the conversation. I just want to add one thing. Josh Brown had been physically violent with her more than 20 occasions over the past several years, according to his wife. So I want to make that clear. So physical 20 times.
And in his journal.
So he's lying then. So he's lying then.
No.
Then he's lying.
I'm just saying,
to me, this is an illustration of why this deserves an elevated and complicated conversation. Josh Brown, in his journals, admitted to physically abusing Molly Brown. He also says he never struck her. So there's some gaps there, but they don't necessarily contradict each other. It adds Molly complicated questions, which I think is this. First, regarding the hypocrisy question that Stephen A. brings up. It's easy to be holier than thou when you are on the outside looking in, when you don't have to deal with these complicated questions about what exactly did Josh do? How is he trying to repent? Is he trying to get help? John Mara was on the outside. in the Ray Rice case. He's on the inside this time, and so he's dealing with the dirty details of life now. So that's why he appears hypocritical. Because when he was on the outside, he's just like us. He can pass simplistic judgments.
But Will, what I'm saying to you is you can't let him off the hook because he's the one that felt the need to speak up about something when he knew he was on the outside.
It's possible.
So you don't get, you don't get to acquire cover for yourself because now you're on the inside because you didn't give those on the inside cover when it came to something that you were not involved in, meaning Mr. Mara.
Right.
You didn't give them any cover. Well, so why should you get it now that you're the one on the inside?
The only answer to that, Stephen A., is that we have to be in pursuit of right, not getting even. We have to be in pursuit of finding ourselves on the side of righteousness. And by the way, if I'm being too naive, if I'm giving John Mara too much credit and assuming good intentions, I would ask you, be cynical. Just be cynical.
Well, let me ask you this.
Hold on, just to finish this point. Do you really think that the New York Giants thought his 37-year-old kicker was so important to their team that they should risk looking lenient on domestic violence? Or do you think that in a post-Ray Rice world, they wanted to appear like, oh, domestic violence, it's no big deal? I don't think they really thought that way. And by the way, listen to Josh Brown's teammates. Do you think Victor Cruz wants to look like a guy who doesn't care about domestic violence? Be cynical throughout the process, and you'll find yourself back at the place where you have to say, there's some complicated details here that have made it not into the public discussion.
With all due respect, you sound a little bit like a cross between Dr. Phil and Oprah here. And what I mean by that is this. You're basically saying if you're looking at Mr. Mara, okay, excuse me, he wasn't looking at it this way, he wasn't looking at it that way. Well, we don't know what the hell he was looking at. All we could go by are his actions. I understand, because as I understood it, Josh Brown said he didn't strike his wife, but he admitted to physical altercations, and which y'all just confirmed, reiterated to me because we had discussed this the other day. But based on what his letter from the other day, he tried to come across as if he's never really physically harmed her. He was trying to give that impression. That's the way I took it.
I want to take it back to Diana Moskowitz's excellent article in Deadspin about this. What makes one of the things, and we were talking about this, I guess, late last week, I suppose. One of the things that makes domestic violence different and worse than other forms of violence is the family as the economic unit. Even if the family's separated, especially in the NFL, high-paying jobs, we're talking about the likely breadwinner in the family, the majority of the family's income. And so, once again, in terms of the moralizing that everyone correctly does, because you want a public sanction against this kind of behavior, but you don't want that to be a wave that washes over every detail in such a way that in every single instance it results in the loss of your job, because that job is what Molly Brown is dependent upon right now, and one of the reasons she was hesitant to report.
I get that, but at the end of the day, no disrespect to anybody, but the bigger issue, and I agree with organizations like the National Organization for Women and others when it comes to this, at the end of the day, you can't sit up here and say, well, you know what? If there's physical violence being exacted against a woman, we have to take her feelings into consideration in terms of wanting to save her husband, you know, his job, because it affects her negatively. If folks had that kind of attitude, then domestic violence would never be resolved.
Well, no, it wouldn't be resolved if it's not reported. Women can't be incentivized to not report. They should report so it can be dealt with.
So then we have to have some system where the wife or the family can still be supported, even if the player not necessarily isn't there. Because then if
absolutely,
if you're punishing basically essentially what you're saying, which is a great point, if you punish
Diana Moskowitz is really
Diana Moskowitz, but if you punish the perpetrator, then it's punishing the victim. So we have to figure that out. So it's not hurting the victim. But I just want to add one more thing before you give the solution. As far as whether he struck her or not, you can still be very physically violent. I don't want to get caught up on that word. There's many other things that you can do, and it's all egregious. So I don't want to start leveling like what's okay, what's not okay based on punishment.
Well, none of us are. Hold it. None of us are trying to absolve him in any way if there were physical violence. My point is the verbal part. If there's no physical violence and all it is verbal, that's a bit more trickier. To me, it's not tricky at all if it's physical, because there should never be any kind of physical violence.
Even if it's non-physical in a strict sense, if there was history of physical violence and it's a big, strong football player behaving in an intimidating way, that also can be received as the police said when they saw Molly Brown. They said her behavior was consistent with someone who has suffered domestic abuse.
I think my overriding point, Max, is this, and it tells what you just said. We have to ask more questions and honestly have fewer conclusions, because not everybody, Molly, has the same definition of what they mean when they say, I was physically abusive. I don't know totally.
That's not realistic, Will.
I don't know what Josh Brown completely meant, and you don't either, because the other day when he said he didn't strike her, everybody's like, oh, my gosh, I assume he admitted to that earlier. We don't know.
What I'm saying,
and Max, if you broaden the category to non-physical, we don't know what that means either. I'm sorry, Stephen A.
I'm saying that from a conclusion perspective, one has to be drawn, because what the NFL is saying is that it's affecting our bottom line. Yeah. When the impression was we were not dealing with this, it was compromising their bottom line, which forced them to deal with it. So not having any conclusions is not, or having less conclusions, as you would say, is not going to work. You have to draw more conclusions because the public is demanding it, and a vast majority of that public are women. This is what they care about, and they're right to feel that way, and you have no choice but to address that. You can't wiggle around.
I just want to say the media and the NFL have a choice to make. You either are going to do something to really combat domestic violence and you really care about it, or you just want to look like you do.
I can just speak for the three of us on the show, and it's not that we want to look like we do. We want to see things get resolved and victims be properly taken care of, not just sensationalized for ratings. It's something close to all of our
How
hearts.
about, Molly?
Yeah.
Remember the solution I said? How about making sure instead of taking the money away from the players, whatever the money is that they're guaranteed, you give it to the wife. You give it to the family. They don't get it.
I'm with
it. Let the wife get it.
We'll leave it there. Will, thank you, and appreciate your perspective on all of this.
Or the victim. Yeah.
When we come back to the court. During last night's Warriors loss to the Spurs, Charles Barkley reiterated that he doesn't see Golden State winning it all this year. Is he right? We'll get into it.
LeBron James is responsible for the super teams is because on nights, he performs like Mike, anyone, Tyson, Jordan, Jackson, Action, Pat Gun. LeBron James' supreme talent warrants people to try to create super teams.
He's changed the status quo. He's taking the power out of the owner's hands. He's doing short-term deals. Players now looking like, I don't have to stay 15 years in one team. He's kind of to blame for this parity in league where everyone thinks they got to join super teams to beat my boy LeBron James.
One love to Stuart Scott. Molly, my wife advised me to take off the shirt and put on some clothes. I listen to McQueen. And Max, we on one accord about who? The super team. It is LeBron James' rule, and everybody else is bowing down to that. Bottom line is this. They all feel Mickelson's to his Tiger Woods.
The one with the bow tie, looking fun. I like these three. These guys are kind of smooth.
I like that.
I like
Those
the
were
energy.
good.
I liked all of them.
Those were good.
Plus,
all three were good.
You got the big quote, Jordan, Jackson, Action. He was doing the hand
He got it. He got the whole deal going. We're into it.
I was impressed.
I
was impressed. That was much better than yesterday.
That
was much better than yesterday.
Way to raise,
Molly,
raise the
that's
level.
why Stephen A. and I have to be so critical.
It
raises the bar.
I know. Just trying to bring out the best in people. Let's get into it. The Warriors started 36-0 at home last season and didn't lose at Oracle until April, but Golden State fell to the Spurs 129-100 in their home opener last night. Charles Barkley has been one of the Warriors' biggest critics, even with the addition of Kevin Durant. During TNT's coverage of the NBA's opening night, Barkley reiterating his position that this Warriors team will not win the chip.
I said to you, the year they won, I said, everything worked out perfect. Every series that year, they were down in the series, and one of those teams were missing their star player. And I said to you, if they can win the championship this year, get through a gauntlet, shoot jumpers, I would get on my knees this show and say I was wrong. And let me tell you something, I'm going to say the same thing this year. I don't think you can win the championship just out shooting people.
Stephen A., what do you think? You agree with Charles Barkley?
Not necessarily. The Warriors, as far as I'm concerned, they came within the Draymond Green suspension of winning back-to-back titles. and certainly adding Kevin Durant, who's one of the prolific scorers this game has ever seen, and a top 3 player on the planet as far as I'm concerned, I think it's very possible that they could pull it off. That doesn't mean that they will. It remains to be seen. There's a season to play, no doubt, but they're the prohibitive favorites for a reason. And I think that the way the game is played now, I think Charles Barkley would be absolutely right. If this were back in the day, you'd see guys getting smacked on their arms, smacked on their shoulders, kneed in the groin, tripped up, all types of insidious stuff happening to them. You can't get away with that in today's game. It's a pretty boys game, to be quite honest with you. LeBron James is rough and tumble. He could play in any era. But the reality is that it's a game that caters to more finesse rather than physicality. And because of that reality, I'm just of the mindset that Charles Barkley is wrong in this estimation. If the Golden State Warriors don't win the championship, I don't think it's going to be because they're primarily a jump shooting perimeter team. I think they could win a championship playing like that. And I think in order for somebody to beat them, they're going to have to stop that. It's not going to be, because the Golden State Warriors prefer to shoot jump shots rather than get to the hole, that they're not going to win. That's not going to be the reason why they're not going to win, because they're certainly going to make enough shots to try and pull it off.
The great Charles Barkley, who is the greatest TV star there is, I think, including everybody, is wrong about this. And I think the reason
I disagree with that, though. I think I'm bigger.
I think he's got you.
Go ahead.
I think he's got you beat. I think the round mound to rebound got you, Stephen A.
I know.
It's not a bad matchup, though. But I think he's wrong, Stephen A., because he has a horse in this race. He has skin in the game here because he's anti-analytics. I mean, that's really, I think, what it comes down to. He comes from an era where you couldn't win the whole thing as a jump shooting team. But then what happened was there was a rules change. And I was among the very many who thought, it's not that big a rules change, really, that it's going to fundamentally change the kind of team that can win a championship. But it did. It did. The hand checking, the whole thing, the zone defense, everything changed in such a way that allowed for a much easier time if you were a three-point shooting team. And analytics that actually studied this and did the math that you hate so much when I do, Stephen A., backed it up. And to give Mike D'Antoni credit, he was the first, I think, to truly understand how you can really more efficiently exploit the rules changes, and then Popovich and others took that to the next level. Look, the Cavs are a three-point shooting team. When the playoffs started, they were shooting the lights out from everyone, against everyone. Now, Barkley can sit there and say, yeah, but you also have to do X, Y, and Z. Well, of course. Of course, you also have to play defense. You also have to do all those other things. But the orthodoxy, the received wisdom, was always a primarily three-point shooting team. If that's really what you're basing your offense around, you're not going to win the championship. And then not only did the Warriors win the championship, and the Spurs is a largely three-point shooting team. Well, but they had guys who could post two, yeah, but the majority of their offense was shooting that three. They won. And as a matter of fact, all the top three-point shooting teams are the only teams you see in the playoffs. If you don't shoot the three, you surely will not make the playoffs. And I think that's why Barkley is digging in his heels on the Warriors right now, because if the Warriors were to win 2 out of 3, that validates a new NBA, a new kind of world that he doesn't want to be true. It's not unlike, I think, when Bill Parcells thought that Bill Walsh had something to prove with his system, even as Bill Walsh was winning Super Bowls, because the same thing back then. The league favored the pass because it was offense. It draws fans in, just like the NBA likes the three, because the offense gets people interested, and the old-timer's going to have to adjust to that.
Well, Max, here's where I'm confused. Is that your way of saying you disagree with Charles Barkley?
Said it right off the top. Said it right off the top. He's wrong.
Okay. No problem. I just wanted to make sure.
I couldn't be any more clear. The great Charles Barkley is wrong about this. And then I told you why he was wrong.
Okay. Well, you told me why for quite a long time that I damn near forgot that you said he was wrong. Now I understand. I appreciate it.
The greatest irony in television is when Stephen A. complains about mic time. That is the greatest irony in television.
All right, you two, let's go.
You evidently don't listen to yourself, but go ahead. It's all right.
I love listening to myself, as a matter of fact. Not as much as you love listening to you, but I do love listening to myself.
That's true. I hear you. I hear you talking.
All right, we're done? We're
Yeah,
good?
we're done.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, Barkley isn't the only one who seems down on the Warriors. Draymond Green's mother chimed in on Twitter saying, taking Dre out of plays is not going to get us wins. I said it and don't care what y'all think about it. No energy. It's flat. It's broke. So I'll leave you with that. His mama. Coming up, we have Coach K with us. We'll ask him about his thoughts on Durant and expectations for the Blue Devils this season. Stick around.
Blocked by Jeter. But how about Chase Jeter protecting the rim? Nard just can't miss. He's going to be a big-time scorer here in Jersey. Allen got to get a shot up. He's going to try to get fouled. He drives it. The whistle bangs it in at the buzzer. Are you serious?
Partially blocked. Duke ball. And Duke is going to win the game.
What an amazing win by Duke.
College Hoops is almost here. Can't wait. We now welcome a very special guest. He's entering his 37th season of head coach of the Duke Blue Devils, where he's a 5-time NCAA champion. We welcome Mike Krzyzewski to the show. Coach, thank you so much for being with us.
No, it's an honor. I actually watched the show, and I have critiques of Stephen A.
Oh, please, feel free
He
to
never
share
wants
them
to
with
hear
us.
it. He never wants to hear it. He's not a coachable guy, which I'm sure the two of you have found that to be true.
We're
And you know what? You know what, Coach? While that may be true, I have to tell you as a teammate, he is a team player. So go figure.
Well, you're trying to make points with him now because you know but he's got talent, so we'll put up with him.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Speaking of talent, Coach, I want to start with you here. We talked about the Warriors losing to the Spurs last night earlier in the show. Obviously, you've coached most of the Warriors stars during the Olympics. How do you think KD is going to fit in with Golden State when things get going?
Well, really well. I mean, KD can fit in great with anybody, but you know, for the Warriors, it's about adjustment, and you don't make adjustment in exhibition games. It's you make adjustments in real time, and the guy on the other bench, Pop, they're a well-oiled machine already. So that result does not surprise me. And you know, it's October, and give them some time to get to know one another, and don't put you know, number of losses like an over and under about how many losses and how many wins they're going to get. Let them develop into a team because KD is.
Oh, Stephen A., you hear what Coach just said? It sounds like it's 1-0 Kellerman from the first debate today.
Whatever. Another day. I got no time to beat up on you right now, Max. I got to get back to Coach K, because Coach K, as much as I love the NBA, I got to admit, y'all got me excited. I'm looking at this roster that you have here, and I read your quotes from the other day where you talked about how it's okay to anticipate, to expect, and to shoot for a championship. The ACC title, regular season tournament, all of that stuff is good, but you are after a national title. You sound so extremely confident, you know, with expectations for this bunch. I'm looking at this kid, Harry Giles, Tatum, and the boys. Talk to me about your team. It looks like you've got one special roster this year.
Well, we have a chance to be really a special group. We have to get healthy. Jason had a minor setback yesterday.
Yeah.
We don't think it'll take much time, but Harry has been away from the game for a year, and but we have other really good players, and you know, Stephen, I'm not, you know, I'm going to be doing this for a while, but not that much longer. The only thing I want us to be able to do is win a national championship and to play the game the right way. And I don't want to be led down the wrong path if we are able to win other things where that's the accomplishment. I don't want that to be the accomplishment or the disappointment. I want us to be at our best in March and hopefully have a chance to play for the national championship in April. If we're not able to do that, we'll be really disappointed, but at least we set our sights on a goal that is achievable.
Coach, I just did 5.5 years in L.A. doing local radio with Marcellus Wiley and also Sports Nation, and that town is starving for a Lakers team that they can get behind, especially for a signature star on the Lakers. What kind of player do the Lakers have in Brandon Ingram?
They have a special player, and the one thing about him is he can't be positioned. You know, don't play him at a 3 or a 4 or a 2. And what they'll have to figure out, I think, is how he can have the ball in his hands, not just to be a catch-and-shoot guy or get it and now score, but to make plays. He's a basketball player, and a really good basketball player, and has a great feel for the game. He can impact the game in a number of different ways, and I think as he learns about the NBA and they learn about him, his growth potential is huge.
Coach, again, back to your team. Grayson Allen, that's a name that comes to mind.
Right.
This is a guy that's one of the best guards in college basketball, maybe the best 2-guard in the nation. And I remember he took some heat, for some, things pertaining to his behavior. I'm like, he's a young kid. He's going to make mistakes, but I love his fiery attitude. I love his go-get-it mentality. I had the pleasure of talking to J.J. Redick about him when he came to his defense. Talk to me about this kid, the maturation process that has taken place with this kid. He seems to be bright. He's obviously very, very talented. And what you're looking for from him this year, because I think he can be big time.
Yeah, I think he's one of the best players in the country and one of the most explosive scorers. He hates to lose. And, as he matures as a basketball player, sometimes that hating to lose can manifest itself in some mistakes. He made a couple of those mistakes last year, but he made a lot of great plays and did a lot of good things, too. Stephen A., he made a great comment about a month ago to our media. He said, I made mistakes last year. It would be the biggest mistake would be if I didn't learn from those mistakes. And so he's learned from them. He's gotten better, and he needs to put that in the past and concentrate on what we're doing as a team, and he's going to be as important a guy as we can have. I love the kid. He's going to graduate in 3 years. He's an academic All-American, and I'll take him on my team anytime.
But, Coach, the thing that I love about him most is that he reminds me of the guys who helped deliver national championships for you. When I think about him, I think about a Bobby Hurley. I think about a Christian Laettner. And we all know what they did for your program.
Yeah, well, in order to do something, you have to have confidence and I call it more of a competitive arrogance. In whatever arena you go in, you can't be dismayed with people cheering against you or whatever. In fact, you should want to play better in those situations. And he has that. Laettner had that at the highest level. Redick definitely. Battier had it, except Battier was more socially acceptable in some ways. He hit it better. But I like a competitive arrogance. Look, the best player in the world has it, and LeBron James. Steph has it in his own way, and you don't achieve high-level accomplishment without having that type of attitude.
Coach, Nigel Hayes had the sign saying a broke college athlete, anything helps, the Wisconsin player. What are your thoughts about that and that issue?
Well, at some time it'd be interesting for all of you to find out what a college athlete gets right now. Compared to a few years ago, it's unbelievable. The cost of attendance, you can help pay their insurance, you can give them clothing, you can do a whole bunch of things. The cost of really doing something with an athlete, like at Duke, all the stuff that we end up doing for them is well over $100,000 a year per player, and much more than the scholarship. Now, can we do more? I think you can do more, and I think a huge thing to investigate is if these guys can, if they're marketable. How do you handle that? I think people are going through that in the NCAA with some of our Olympic athletes in other sports, that they've become so marketable in what they're giving up as in order to play in college. And we should keep advancing. We should keep advancing and help him. But I'm sure Nigel's just he's being fed.
While we're on the subject of amateurism,
right.
Given what just is going on with Rick Pitino now, how concerned are you that, if the buck stops here, if you have that mentality of not knowing something that might be going on in your program that isn't kosher?
Well, I don't think it's not just in our program. It's in your own family, in your business, or whatever. How can you know about everything? What you want to do as a leader whether you're the leader of a family, a business, or whatever, is to try to create an environment where there are checks and balances by all the people on your team. And obviously, in Rick's case, there was a member of his team that, went out of the box, and he's acknowledged that. And but that's what you try to do, is you try to maintain a climate that's conducive to doing it the right way by all levels of people. Excuse me.
Thank you, Coach.
Coach, we got to get you some water. Appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Can't wait to see you back out there, and we'll take your pointers anytime. Send them on in.
Stephen A. choked me up.
He does that. He does it to the best of us. Coach, thanks.
Thanks, Coach. Thank you.
Coming up next, boxing promoter Bob Arum joins us to talk about Manny Pacquiao's next big fight. Will we ever get to see a rematch with Floyd Mayweather? That subject next.
He got so schooled. Put Manny Pacquiao to sleep. Pacquiao actually looked like he quit. Are you okay, Manny? The boy got schooled. Obviously, he desperately wants to redeem himself. This boy got put to sleep. Manny Pacquiao didn't have anything. So why Manny Pacquiao continues to bloviate to the public about a potential rematch just speaks of desperation.
We would like to welcome another special guest to the show. He's here to discuss the big upcoming welterweight title fight between Stephen A.'s favorite, Manny Pacquiao, and Jesse Vargas. We welcome top-ranked promoter Bob Arum to the First Take show. How we doing?
Hey, good. Nice to be here.
Thank you so much for being with us. Bob, I want to start with another fight, though. Do you think there's still a chance we could see a Floyd Mayweather-Manny Pacquiao rematch?
That's really unfair to even talk about. Floyd has said that he's retired, and to speculate that he might come back, that's just out of order. I mean, it's really up to Floyd whether he's going to come back from retirement, and I have absolutely no idea whether he will.
Well, Bob Arum, I want to move on anyway because I want to talk about Manny Pacquiao for a second. He said that he was going to retire, but now he's back fighting. Why is that, and what is his ultimate goal?
Okay, first, Stephen, you have to realize what's happening here. What's happening here is something that I have never seen in 50 years of boxing. Manny Pacquiao was elected to the Senate in the Philippines. There are only 24 senators. 12 get elected every 6 years. Before he was elected, he promised the Philippine people that unlike Marco Rubio in the U.S. Senate, that he would make every Senate session, wouldn't miss one. So he's now on 15 Senate committees, and he attends every single session of the Senate. So that means that from 9 in the morning till 7 at night, he is a senator in the Philippines, and a very respected senator, I may add. And he trains for a fight, runs in the morning, and goes into the gym at night. Now, I don't know how he can do that. I don't know if it's possible. We'll see on November 5. He loves boxing. He wants to continue as a fighter. But I have never seen a world-class fighter who has a day job that takes all this time while he's competing at the highest level.
Bob, Max Kellerman here. Terence Crawford was the fighter that a lot of people were talking about, assuming Pacquiao wins, and he's favored to do so. What are the odds that we see, given the fact that whether or not Mayweather says he's fighting, that remains there in potentially at least a huge payday? Given that that payday remains potentially there, what are the odds we see Pacquiao in against Terence Crawford at some point?
Well, first, Max, let me talk about the Vargas fight.
Sure.
Because the odds started Pacquiao a 10-to-1 favorite. They're down to 5-to-1. Vargas looks terrific. Vargas is bound and determined not only to win the fight, but to knock Pacquiao out. I don't know who's going to win the fight, but one thing I'm sure, it's going to end in a knockout.
Yeah, Vargas is a solid fighter who's gotten better, even shown more power recently, but still Pacquiao is a 5-to-1 favorite at this point. Assuming...
Well, it's a 5-to-1 favorite because nobody who's setting those odds have been to the Philippines like I have, and to see the kind of workload he has, I really mean that. I mean, it's crazy, the hours that he puts in, and people say, well, you know, he's an athlete, so how can anybody take him seriously as a senator? But remember, Manny's been all over the world, and a lot of these senators haven't. So they look up to Manny because he has a world view, because he's traveled the world.
So, Bob Arum, you sound worried. Are you worried because you're worried about his schedule and how that may affect him? Or are you more worried because Jesse Vargas is being underrated to some degree in your eyes? Which one is it?
Jesse Vargas has become a terrific fighter. He has a trainer, Dewey Cooper, that has turned him from being a defensive fighter to being an offensive force. And when he won the world title, he knocked out Saddam Ali, who is a terrific fighter, was a member of the U.S. Olympic team, and he knocked Ali out cold. And let me tell you something, the way Manny fights and the way Vargas fights, if Vargas hits him, which he's capable of doing, he could knock Pacquiao out. Remember, Vargas had Bradley out in the last round. The referee stopped the fight by mistake because he thought that the 10-second was the bell. Probably wouldn't have been able to knock Bradley out. There was only 10 seconds left. But what happens if he hit Bradley with that punch in the 10th round rather than the 12th round? He might have...
Vargas has been displaying improved power, not only against Ali, but also against Bradley, no doubt about it, and he's a good fighter. Assuming the favorite wins, though, Bob, is there a Terence Crawford fight in the offing in the not-too-distant future? How realistic would that be to be made? Terence Crawford, one of the pound-for-pound best fighters in the world today, undefeated American champion.
Right. And the thing I like about a Pacquiao-Crawford fight is that it would probably be held at 140 pounds, which is a more natural weight for Manny Pacquiao. He's really not a 147-pounder, although he's been campaigning as one for years. Crawford's a sensational fighter. But Crawford, on December 10th, will have a major fight, which you will be calling, Max, on HBO from Omaha, Nebraska, and will be announcing his opponent. He gets by that fight. Manny beats Vargas. I'd love to make a fight between Manny Pacquiao
and Crawford,
and
by the way, Crawford seeks out the biggest and the best. He only wants to fight the best.
That is correct.
But let me say this, guys. Well, Max is calling that fight. I'm calling a fight on November 5th. And I got to ask you this question, Bob Arum. Max brings up Terence Crawford. One of the debates that he and I keep having when it comes to Manny Pacquiao is, how come he keeps mentioning Terence Crawford? How come I haven't heard the name Errol Spence Jr.? I would like to see Pacquiao in a fight like that. What about something like that, Bob? Assuming he wins.
Wait. Errol Spence looks like he's going to be a terrific fighter. He really does. But he hasn't really proven himself. He hasn't fought for a world title yet. He hasn't fought some of the best fighters in the welterweight division. Can he possibly rise to the top? Can he beat a Garcia? Can he beat a Thurman? We don't know. Probably yes. But the truth is, he's a terrific prospect, but he's still a prospect. Stephen, he's still a prospect. Maybe he has the goods to rise.
Well, he's a contender, but I agree with you. He hasn't proven what Crawford's proven so far. But by the eyeball test, I think we'd all agree, eventually, if they're the same size, Crawford and Spence would be a tremendous matchup. In the meantime, Stephen A., I know you want to talk about Pacquiao.
Well, listen, I'm just looking at Pacquiao, and I'm of this mindset. As I look at Pacquiao, Bob Arum, I'm wondering what the goal is. Because, like you said, this schedule probably is not going anywhere. And if you're worried about him with the schedule, assuming, again, he gets past Jesse Vargas, the reality is clear. He's going to need to be locked in and focused on boxing and not being a senator in order to beat some of those elite fighters that are out there. Wouldn't you say that?
No, because he's made a commitment to the Philippine people. He's a very sincere, dedicated guy. And his commitment to the Philippine people to serve as a full-time senator takes precedence over his boxing career. I had to fly over to the Philippines to meet with the president of the Philippine Senate to determine when they're going to take a recess to get, and the only date we could get for Manny was November 5. And the only concession they would make to Manny's boxing career is the session will not start on Monday after the fight because he can't get back. You lose a day traveling over there. It will start on Tuesday. Tuesday, which is election day in the United States. We're all particularly great boxing fans and sportsmen will have gone to the polls and will elect the first woman president of the United States.
Bob, before we let you go, as we mentioned, Stephen A. will be calling that fight November 5th. How do you think he's going to do?
Well, let me tell you something. Because we are producing the telecast ourselves. By the way, Stephen, it will be seen by more people than watch the Super Bowl. 100 million people will be watching in China because Zhao Shiming is in one of their two-time gold medal, will be in one of the 100 million projected people. Now we have Stephen A. Smith taking the place of Max Kellerman. And everybody would agree it's a tremendous upgrade.
I think Tom just got sweaty and backs got tight like Stephen A.
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far. I beat Max up. I beat Max up on a regular basis here. I can't say I would do that there. I know my place, Max. I know my place, Max. That wasn't me.
Enough on this show. All right, listen.
That wasn't me, Max.
You still got it, Bob Arum.
I love you both.
Thank you. Thank you for making my day with that.
Right.
Thanks for being with us. Looking forward to the fight November 5th and Stephen A. calling it. Coming up next, though, Jay Cutler.
I didn't know it was going to be 100 million. 100 million?
Don't
You'll
pretend to be
fine.
nervous.
You
You're gonna be
love
fine.
it. Already picked the suit out. Jay Cutler says the Bears have no choice but to start him now that Brian Hoyer's out. Do the guys like that he said this? We'll discuss. Expected to be out 6 to 8 weeks. Max Kellerman, do you have a problem with Cutler's comments?
I don't. The way I read that, I actually don't. It doesn't come off as whiny to me or like he's complaining about anything. The fact is he lost his job. Hoyer was playing really well. Now the other quarterback's hurt. He even refers to him as Foxy. I know you can call maybe everyone, it doesn't matter if everyone calls John Fox Foxy. Even that tells me it's like familiar. He's not going at his coach. He's not going at the organization. He's not pointing fingers. He lost his job. Now he has it back due to injury. So ask him what's going on here, and he's going to tell you. Other guy got hurt. You got to go with me. What choice do you have? And maybe it's because he's been paid, Stephen A., that he doesn't come off as whiny to me as, say, a guy like Fitzpatrick, who didn't get paid and kind of, after he gets the job back because of injury to Geno Smith, sounds like he's complaining after the game. Residual effect from the offseason where they didn't get him the contract because he's not good enough to earn it. Maybe Cutler got the contract so he feels better about it, but I don't mind the way he said it at all, as opposed to especially the way Fitzpatrick sounded.
Well, I mind it, but that's because I mind everything about Jay Cutler. I mind the way he looks. I mind the way I mind the way he acts. I'm serious. I mind the way the stuff comes out of his mouth. When I'm talking about his looks, I'm talking about smugness. The fact of the matter is that Jay Cutler came across as somebody that basically looked at John Fox like, what choice do you have? That's right, I'm here. So what? Because he sounds like somebody who's removed from caring. Now, I don't know that to be true because I don't know him from a can of paint, and I understand that. I'm not his wife, I'm not his child, I'm not his teammate, I'm not his coach, but Jay Cutler has been a walking piece of mediocrity for quite some time. And I've been on the record calling him the worst quarterback in football, not because of his athletic ability or his ability to throw the football or anything like that, because I know he's better than most in that regard. Why I call him the worst is because he is devoid of leadership ability from a position that requires exactly that in order to galvanize the troops around them. and maximize the potential that exists within the team. That's not Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler is a guy that signed on the dotted line that makes sure he shows up to work so he can sit up there and say he did his job so he can get his check. He is not somebody that comes to work every day hell-bent on winning and is sick to his stomach because his team doesn't do it. In 9 full seasons as a starting quarterback in the NFL, he has produced a winning record 3 times. That is it. He is who he is. The sooner he gets the hell out of Chicago, the sooner they can start rebuilding their franchise and moving in a forward direction. Because unless you have already you already have an established culture, a la New England or somebody like that, Jay Cutler can do nothing but take you backwards. It is just that simple to me. That is how I view him, and that is how I view everything that is associated with him as a football player, not as a person off the football field, but as a football player on the field and anything associated with being a quarterback. He is not somebody that I would want on my team. That will never change, and that is the way that I feel, period.
Well, one thing that we certainly don't tolerate on First Take is smug people, Stephen A., so maybe you're right. How dare he look smug? How dare he look smug, especially with the people on this show. You and I talking about a quarterback, that's exactly what we should get on about.
Definitely
a smug attitude.
You don't look, hold it, you don't look smug. You're a choir boy. I will accept the smug tag.
I don't know about that.
You are a choir boy without question. But me, could I say I'm smug? Sure, but here's the difference. Here's the difference. My winning percentage far exceeds Jay Cutler any day of the week.
Well, not since about, 3 or 4 months ago it hasn't. Something happened where you've been taking a lot of L's.
The facts
They're looking at your mechanics, how many steps you're dropping back. Are you keeping your eyes down the field?
You know what the trick is?
They're blaming your offensive line. Why is he taking so many L's?
Here's the deal, Max. You try to fool our audience by wearing what looks to be the same suit every day so they can act like it's Groundhog's Day. When you have a moment, they can sit up there and say, well, that's the same thing. He must have won, but it ain't going to help you.
When you guys clown each other.
They know better.
Everyone knows.
They know better.
Everyone knows who the best dressed guy on TV.
Boy, he's lucky. He's lucky. He's lucky my voice is messed up.
The egos I deal with. Do you see these egos I deal with, people? You too. All right. More First Take after the break. Stay with us.
All it really takes to be in the conversation of GOAT is to be the undisputed best player in your given era. Meaning, for a select amount of years, there was no question who was the greatest player in your era. So it's actually disrespectful to LeBron James and his legacy to exclude him from that conversation.
The argument should not be whether or not LeBron can catch Jordan. The argument should probably be, could he catch Tim Duncan? He's behind Jordan, Kobe, Magic, Kareem, Bill Russell, Shaq, and Tim Duncan. How did he jump all these people?
I'm going to tell you what LeBron did that Michael Jordan didn't do. LeBron went back to his hometown of Cleveland, and you know what he did? With far less talent, back against the wall, he beat a powerhouse in Golden State Warriors with far less talent.
Yeah, what do we think, guys? My two tough judges here.
I like the guy asking the question about Tim Duncan and Kobe and all that. He makes very, very valid points in that regard. But the one after him, I like the delivery. I like the presentation.
I thought that guy was the best of the bunch, but if your content isn't airtight, and I thought it was good but not great content, then your flavor's got to be over the top, and neither one was quite over the top, Stephen A. We had a couple better earlier, I think.
I got to admit, Max is a little hard on these guys, and I love it. I love it. I appreciate that. Listen, let's not let them off the hook. Let's not let them off the hook, Max. I mean, Max, if they want to come on, the show. They want to be on national television. They got to bring it. I like Max doing like that. That's actually one good thing I do like. Wow. I'm proud of you, Max.
And
I'm proud.
I'll continue to be nice.
There's always something.
We asked you earlier in the show to vote on Twitter. Has Durant made the Warriors worse? And you said 47% saying yes. 53% say no. So 47% of the greater American population thinks Kevin Durant has made.
Temporarily, he's made them worse. Yes. Temporarily.
Stephen A., your
People
thoughts?
are smoking something. Oh, please, it's one game, one night. Something wrong with all those people. Just like it's something wrong with Max. I don't even know what the hell they talking about.
By the way, everyone's going to be watching
ridiculous.
Westbrook tonight.
Yeah,
and all
what do you
that.
expect? Durant said after the game that the loss was a slap in the face. You know what, Stephen A.? Let's go there. Has Durant made the Warriors worse?
First of all, I think the question itself is idiotic, and anybody who thinks that it makes the Warriors worse after one game is idiotic. It makes no sense whatsoever. It's an 82-game schedule. It's one bad night. They didn't show up to play, which is something we have to ask Steve Kerr about, who is a great coach but has struggled in Game 7 of last year's NBA Finals and struggled the very next game, which was Game 1 of this season. They seemed ill-prepared. Let me just put it out there. They were missing threes. Steph Curry shot 3 of 10 from three-point range. Klay Thompson shot 1 of 6. That's 4 of 16 from the best shooting backcourt we've ever seen, okay? They did not have a good night. They were missing layups. They were sloppy with the basketball. They were turning it over. Meanwhile, the San Antonio Spurs had aberrations all over the place. Jonathan Simmons, 20 points on 8 of 14 shooting. Kawhi Leonard, we know he can play. We know he's a stud. But 35 points, come on now. That's not what you expect from Kawhi Leonard. Well, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? We're talking about the Spurs and Warriors.
I'm sorry, I didn't know. Carmelo or Kawhi.
But I didn't know that that's what we were talking about. I thought we were talking about the Spurs and Warriors last night.
I didn't even know I said it out loud.
You're already annoying him.
Yeah, you did. Okay. The point is that, and I'm a little sick by the way, but I'm all right. The point is that Kawhi Leonard is not going to drop 35 on most nights. Kawhi Leonard is a stud. We know he could play. But the kind of night that he had last night was by and large due to the sloppiness of the Golden State Warriors that gave the San Antonio Spurs an abundance of opportunities. San Antonio, obviously exceptionally well coached, came ready to play. They were ready for the season opener, and they performed like it. But the Golden State Warriors were incredibly sloppy. That is an aberration. That is not something that's going to happen on most nights against this team. It was a bad night. That's all it was.
Of course, Kevin Durant has made them worse. We're talking about right now, are they better or worse than they were last year when they were a 73-win team that came within a couple of minutes, really a couple of possessions, of winning the finals again? Yes, they are worse for now. Just like when LeBron and Bosh got to the Heat with Wade, they didn't get worse because of where the Heat were coming from. But it took them a while to get going. Through their first 17 games, they were 9-8. And then they went 22-1. So, and made it to the finals where LeBron choked it away, but still they were favored and they probably should have won had LeBron not choked it away. So does Kevin Durant in the long run make the Warriors the favorites still? Yes, I believe he does. Do I think they're going to win the chip this year? Yes, I think they will. You take out Harrison Barnes in a death lineup and insert Kevin Durant, boy, that's worse than a death lineup. That's a lineup will kill you and then kill you again in the afterlife. So I think he makes them better in the long run. But for now, and maybe for the foreseeable future, for the first 10, 15, maybe 20 games, they're not going to be as good as they were. That is a major piece to integrate into the chemistry of the team. And I don't just mean the way the death lineup maybe works. It's the way Steve Kerr has to juggle the pieces. When do we play Steph with Durant? Because when they played together, actually, they were a +1 on the Spurs. But he tried to play them separately. It didn't work. Big negative plus-minus numbers when he did that. How do we fit Iguodala into this? What's his role in the second unit? All those things have to be figured out now against real NBA competition with the money on the line now over the first several weeks of the season. And over that time, this Warriors team will be worse than they were. Of course they will be.
Well, listen, the point that I'm trying to make to you is this. Even last night was no indication because of the missed shots. If Steph Curry and Klay Thompson don't shoot 4 of 16 from three-point range, what are we talking about here?
8 of 16.